Chapter 658. What caused Oriton and Lee's quarrel to end was Burke, who was being supported by Kanwoo and Jiaoyu as they walked closer. Huda carried Qixuan in his arms and walked in front of Gu Mengmeng. He looked at Gu Mengmeng with his clear and bright eyes and asked, "Mummy, can we invite Kanwoo's master for a meal?" "Master?" Gu Mengmeng frowned and asked. Kanwoo walked in front of Gu Mengmeng, treating Elvis, who was sitting beside Gu Mengmeng, as though he was invisible. Kanwoo's eyes, which were 80% similar to Elvis's, carried a stubbornness that did not belong to his age. He said, "Master Burke was injured while trying to save me, so he is temporarily unable to hunt. I feel that I should at least be able to afford his food before he recovers, but the current me is still too weak. Mom, can you allow Master Borg to eat with us for a while?" Gu Mengmeng placed her hand lightly on Kanwoo's head and rubbed it gently. "It's a good character to be grateful. Mummy will definitely support you." Kanwoo pounced into Gu Mengmeng's arms and hugged Gu Mengmeng's neck tightly with his little hands. He pressed his chubby little face against Gu Mengmeng's and mumbled for a while before saying, "Mummy, thank you." Gu Mengmeng chuckled and hugged her awkward son back. She looked up at the pale-faced Burke and said, "Sit, let's eat together." Burke took a step forward, but Leah stood in front of him and said coldly, "I remember I have already paid you." Burke's gaze was filled with a sense of inferiority. Of course he knew the difference between him and Leah, not to mention Elvis, who was sitting beside Gu Mengmeng. He also knew that it was not good to be greedy, so when Gu Mengmeng asked him to follow them to Saint Nazaire, he almost wanted to agree without caring about anything else. However, during the days in Sauder, he gradually understood what kind of person Cole was who had guided him to Gu Mengmeng's side. He did not know what kind of role he was playing in Cole's chessboard. He was extremely afraid that he would become a chess piece to hurt Gu Mengmeng, so he chose to stay away from her and watched her leave. But he couldn't control his heart. He desperately wanted to get closer to her. Just a little bit would do. Not knowing what tricks Cole would play on her, he was really worried about her safety. That was why he had come. He had quietly followed behind the group and watched them from afar. They were so far away that they could only see the sesame-sized shadow of the last person in the group. Only then would they not be discovered. Until he noticed the stray beast's attack, his brain almost lost control. Even though he knew how dangerous the stray beasts were, he still charged over without hesitation. Seeing Kanwoo being attacked by two stray beasts, the combination of their moves was almost fatal. He did not have Elvis's ability and could not counter this attack. The only way was to block it for him. He knew that even he would die if he were to take this attack head-on. But all she could think of was Gu Mengmeng's sad and helpless gaze as she hugged Qixuan. She already had a son whose life or death was unknown. She couldn't have another one. As long as she could be well, she would let him die for Kanwoo. Chapter 659. Jiaoyu took 2 steps forward and gently tugged on Lee's beastskin skirt. He looked up at Leah with a pair of eyes that was extremely similar to Gu Mengmeng's. "If you chase Burke away, Kanwoo will definitely starve with him. As brothers, we will advance and retreat together with Kanwoo. If all 4 sons have nothing to eat at the same time, who do you think will feel heartache?" Leah raised his brows and looked down at Jiaoyu with a smile. "Are you threatening me?" Jiaoyu did not deny it. He just looked up at Leah. "I heard that you are always showing off, saying that mother is always biased towards you." Leah chuckled and responded with a sounding a little proud. Jiaoyu said, "Then what if the 4 of us hug mother and cry together? If we say that you are bullying us, who do you think mother will be biased towards?" Lee's eyelids twitched. He stared at Jiaoyu with a dangerous gaze. "Rascal, you are playing with fire." Jiaoyu shrugged. "Stop pretending. You can't do anything to my eyes." Leah gritted his teeth. He thought he had put on a good disguise. In the end, this rascal had grasped his weakness. Yes, he could not harden his heart to do anything when facing this pair of eyes that looked exactly like Chung Mingming's. Jiaoyu continued, "Let Burke stay for a meal. Otherwise, I will tell mother that you beat us up." Leah raised his brows. Was he trying to create an injustice? Since when did he beat them up? Jiaoyu said. "Also, you and Auntie Mandy were exchanging flirtatious glances." Lee's eyes widened. He instantly understood Jiaoyu's intentions. Gu Mingming's hearing was different from before. She could hear every single word that this rascal was saying. Jiaoyu raised his little face and smiled brightly. But there was a small evil glint in his eyes. You even called out a female's name when you were asleep, something Jillian. The veins on Li's forehead twitched. This little wolf cub was really good at making up lies. Who could he not mention? Why did he have to mention Jillian, the snow fox that he was engaged to? Jiaoyu wanted to say more, but Leah covered his mouth and gave in with a black face. Let him eat, all right? If you keep lying, your mother is going to explode. Jiaoyu smiled triumphantly and gently slapped Li's wrist away. He turned around and walked back. After taking 2 steps, he turned back and lightly patted Li's shoulder. With a sincere and earnest look he said, I am also doing this for my brother. I have no choice. You don't have to take it to heart. In any case, you wouldn't dare to kill me. Also, your mother is going to explode. Your whole tribe is going to explode. With that, Jiaoyu sighed maturely and walked back to Burke's side. He held onto one of his arms and said, My mother's males don't have normal brains. Don't bother with lunatics. Since my mom said you can stay for dinner, you can eat without worry. After all, my mother is the one who calls the shots in this family. Kanwu stood up from Gu Mingming's arms. He hesitated for a moment before kissing Gu Mingming on the cheek. Without saying a word, he walked to the other side of Burke and sat beside the fire with Jiaoyu on Burke's left and right. Huda handed Qixuan over to Jiaoyu. Then he went to fetch the bowls and chopsticks. He scooped up some meat from the pot and filled 4 small bowls. He passed them to his brothers and Burke respectively. Then he carried Qixuan back into his arms. All right, let's eat. Aside from the topic. Chapter 660. The atmosphere during this meal was rather strange. Oriton glared at Leah, looking as if he had a poker face, and was unable to satisfy his craving. Leah and Elvis's sharp gazes could not wait to poke Burke's body into a honeycomb coal, chewing mouthfuls as if it was Burke's bones instead of meat. Burke and the 3 little ones ate quietly, trying their best to control their eyes, but still could not help but stare at Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming facepalmed, wishing that her observation skills were not so sharp. She just wanted to have a good meal. Reaching out to hug Kanwu, Gu Mingming realized that the meat in his bowl was barely touched, so she asked with concern, Why aren't you eating? Kanwu lowered his head and stared at the meat in his bowl, replying, Master Burke was invited back by me, so my portion is for Master Burke to eat. Gu Mingming frowned, feeling a little heartache. She knew that Elvis's education was too forceful, causing a lot of psychological pressure on this child. But she could not say that Elvis was wrong in front of the child, so she could only comfort him. Silly son, Burke saved you, so he is our family's benefactor. Even if you did not invite him back, Mummy will not watch him starve. So you don't have to save your own food for him. Just eat obediently, all right? Kanwu looked up at Gu Mingming, but lowered his head again. Shaking his little head, he said, No, I will repay my own kindness. Gu Mingming did not miss the way Kanwu glanced at Elvis from the corner of his eyes when he said that. Gu Mingming's heart ached for her son, and even the way she looked at Elvis was a little sad. Elvis sighed as if he was admitting defeat, but did not say anything else. Kanwu looked up at Gu Mingming, saying with an extremely serious face, Mummy, I have Burke as my master. He will teach me how to become stronger. From tomorrow onwards, we will start practicing from hunting. So don't worry, I can take responsibility for my own decision. How could a child who was not even a year old talk about taking responsibility? It made one's heart ache to hear it. Gu Mingming hugged her son into her arms, then gave half of the meat in her bowl to Kanwu, saying, How about this? You give your portion to Burke, Mummy will give you half of her portion. How about this? Kanwu shook his head and poured the meat back into Gu Mingming's bowl. He looked at Gu Mingming with a clear and determined gaze and said, I'm a male beast, how can I snatch a female's food? Mom, you're making me feel useless. Gu Mingming bit her lower lip. She really wanted to borrow a cell phone to surf the internet and post a thread asking, what to do if the child is too headstrong? Which family's son entered the rebellious phase at the age of 1? Please enlighten me. I'm waiting online. It's urgent. Elvis slowly stood up and walked to Gu Mingming's side. He kicked Kanwu to the ground before lifting up the bowl and directly pouring the meat into his mouth. His large hand covered Kanwu's mouth like a pair of metal pincers. "Just eat when I ask you to, don't make my wife worry." Kanwu's eyes were red, but he stubbornly refused to cry. He swallowed the meat in his mouth without even chewing it. When Gu Mingming pushed Elvis away and hugged Kanwu, he had already swallowed the food in his mouth. Elvis placed the empty bowl down for her to see and said gently, "All right, he has eaten. Don't worry." Chapter 661. Elvis was speechless from the scolding. He looked at the empty bowl and did not know what to do. Giving the wolf pups meat was also wrong? Kanwu bit his lower lip and forcibly held back his tears. He said, "Mummy, don't be angry. The weak do not have the right to resist. One day, I will become stronger and never let you worry about me again." With that, he suddenly stood up and ran out. Gu Mingming wanted to chase after him, but fell to the side the moment she stood up. Luckily, Elvis was not far away and caught Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming wanted to push Elvis away, but after hearing that groan, she looked to the side and saw that Elvis's head was covered in fine beads of sweat. She recalled that he still had injuries that had not healed because of her loss of control. It was already so difficult for him to stand and walk. It must be even more difficult for her to catch a free fall. Gu Mingming could only watch worriedly as Kanwu ran far away. She bit her lower lip and could not say a word. Burke stood up with Jiaoya's help and walked to Gu Mingming's side. Standing shoulder to shoulder with her, he said, "Don't worry, I will take care of him." Gu Mingming looked to the side at Burke. Now there was no better way. "Sorry to trouble you," Burke chuckled. "If you had not unleashed your king's aura, I would definitely not have been able to withstand the second blow from those two stray beasts. So, actually you saved my life. To repay you, taking care of Kanwu is not a big deal. He is a very sensible child." With that, Burke walked in the direction where Kanwu had disappeared. Huda carried Qixuan and walked to Gu Mingming. He raised his little face and said, "Mummy, your body is too weak. You need to rest and recuperate. I will help you look after your brothers and not let them cause any trouble. So don't worry too much, all right?" Gu Mingming rubbed Huda's little head. Her heart was filled with guilt. If she had taken good care of her own sons back then, and not let them experience that kidnapping, and not let them witness her being tortured to death by Ellie, would they not have matured so early? Being forced to grow up was a psychological trauma, but she did not know how to make up for it. Huda looked at Elvis, then at Leah. He sighed and did not say anything. He just shook his head and walked away. The veins on Elvis's forehead twitched. He was going against the heavens. It was only until Burke and the three precocious kids had disappeared that Gu Mingming retracted her gaze and looked at Elvis. "How badly are you injured? Don't lie to me. Tell me the truth." Elvis's heart skipped a beat. He thought that Leah and Oriton's banter had already settled this matter, and Gu Mingming would not pursue the matter further. Frowning, Elvis started to dislike those wolf cubs even more. If Kanwu had not suddenly run away, causing Gu Mingming to almost lose her balance after getting up to chase after him, he would not have rushed over to hug Gu Mingming, causing pressure on his wound and causing Cheng Mingming to worry. Chapter 662. Gu Mingming's heart skipped a beat as she frowned at Elvis. "So serious?" Elvis glared at Leah before caressing Gu Mingming's little face gently. "I'm a 5th-level beast. Although he is not as good as you, he is still an outstanding figure. Don't listen to Lee's bluff. Aren't I standing right here?" Gu Mingming bit her lip and said, "Lie down over there." Elvis was taken aback by Gu Mingming's roar. Seeing the tears welling up in her eyes made him even more flustered and afraid than when she lost control and flew into a rage. "Don't be angry. I'll lie down, okay?" Elvis walked to the spot Gu Mingming pointed at and laid down obediently. He looked at Gu Mingming carefully and said, "I'm lying down. Do you want to come over?" Gu Mingming sniffed and allowed Leah to carry her back to Elvis's side. Leah sat cross-legged on the ground while Gu Mingming sat in his arms. Her waist was supported firmly by Lee's large tail, and she nestled in Lee's arms without using any strength. "Why aren't you lying down properly when you're so badly injured?" Gu Mingming was angry. She was angry at him for not taking care of his own body, and even angrier at herself for injuring him to this extent. Elvis looked at Gu Mingming with a deep gaze and said, "I get flustered when I can't see you, so wherever you are I will be." Silly wolf. Gu Mingming rubbed her eyes, then turned to look at Leah and asked, "What about you? Was he really all right? You're not lying? I clearly saw those two stray beasts working together to kill you." Leah purposely said sourly, "You only remembered to care about me now? TSK, TSK, TSK. I thought I was an unloved one. You wouldn't care even if I died." Gu Mingming glared at Leah with a stern expression. "Don't try to bluff your way out of this. Tell me the truth." Leah immediately kept his playful expression and shifted his gaze away timidly. He then secretly peeked at Gu Mingming from the corner of his eyes and said guiltily, "My injuries are not as serious as Elvis's. I'm almost recovered." "Really?" Gu Mingming was skeptical. The two males in her family were too good at flaunting their superiority, always putting up a facade in front of her. Leah cleared his throat and said, "Most of my injuries are external injuries caused by those stray beasts. This kind of injury was common in the past. It didn't hurt much, and he was used to it. I'll be fine in at most 3 to 5 days." Gu Mingming reached out and poked Lee's body a few times. Seeing that he was really fine, she heaved a sigh of relief. "Then what about Elvis? Is it good for us to just wait for him like this?" Leah nodded. "Don't worry, the most dangerous period is over. Now that he can stand, walk and talk, it proves that he won't die." Actually, Leah didn't say anything. In order to recall Gu Mingming's consciousness and prevent her from being smashed into minced meat by the explosive force that was too much for her body to handle, Elvis endured the intense pain and walked to Gu Mingming's side. Not only were his bones injured, his organs were also injured. If Gu Mingming had held back her pressure a second later, Elvis's heart would have shattered into pieces. By then, he might not even have a complete corpse. Although he had the recovery ability of a 5th-level beast, Elvis's injuries were too severe. He did not agree with Elvis pretending to be fine in front of Gu Mingming from the start, and told him to rest well. But he did not listen, and insisted on staying by Gu Mingming's side to prove that he was fine and not make her feel guilty. What was the result? Chapter 663. Did he still not understand until now? He was no longer the insignificant Elvis, who would appear in front of Gu Mingming with an injured leg, and she would not even question him about how he was injured. Now she cared about him. Even the slightest bit of abnormality could not be hidden from her eyes. Knowing that Elvis's life was not in danger, Gu Mingming felt much more at ease. Turning back, she saw Oriton scooping meat from the pot with his chopsticks. Oriton met Gu Mingming's gaze and felt a moment of awkwardness. His gaze turned away stiffly, and his hands maintained the posture of scooping meat from the pot. His face was expressionless, but it gave off an awkward atmosphere. Gu Mingming could not help chuckling. "Oriton, what about you? Are your injuries serious?" Oriton cleared his throat and kept his chopsticks. He sat upright and still, looking at Gu Mingming. Maintaining his usual poker face, he said calmly, "To me, fighting with stray beasts is a common occurrence. There is a limit to how much they can hurt me, so my injuries are slightly lighter than Lee's. It's not serious." Gu Mingming retracted her gaze and stared closely at her own knees. After hesitating for a long time, she slowly opened her mouth. "What about the others, are they all right?" Leah knew that some things could not be hidden. After 2 days of rest, when they were ready to set off again, Gu Mingming would be able to tell how many people were missing from the group. Pulling Gu Mingming into his arms, he gently propped his chin on the top of her head. No tribe dares to say that they could escape unscathed from a battle with stray beasts. Even the previous messenger of the beast deity had some victories and some losses, but there was never a complete victory. So, Gu Mingming clenched her fists tightly and frowned. Her throat was tight, causing her voice to be dry and hoarse. "How many died in the hands of the stray beasts? And how many died in my hands?" Leah wanted to say that they all died in the hands of the stray beasts. But could such a lie fool Gu Mingming now? Leah held on to Gu Mingming's shoulders. "You could not control your emotions, because you saw me in danger. So their deaths are not because of you, but because of me. I will become stronger, strong enough to protect myself and my people. I won't let you lose control because of me again. So, you're not allowed to take these responsibilities on yourself. Do you hear me? Gu Mingming's brows were still tightly furrowed. She looked straight into Li's eyes and said, "Tell me how much." Leah hugged Gu Mingming in his arms, his heart aching for her. He sighed and said, 72 people died in the battle, 90 beast pressure. Gu Mingming's body went limp, and she fell into Li's arms. Most of these people had joined Saint Nazir during Sauter's beauty pageant. She had clearly promised to lead them to a good life. But before their good days came, they died in her hands. Leah caressed Gu Mingming's back and said, "Mingming, listen to me. In the beast world, the death of males was a very common thing. This was the survival of the fittest, the inevitable outcome of natural selection. It's the male's incompetence if they can't protect themselves. This is not your fault." Chapter 664. Leah and Elvis exchanged glances and heaved a sigh of relief. Gu Mingming continued, 162 males. I'm afraid every family will suffer some losses. Arrange for the single males to protect and take care of the females, with reduced family members, to ensure that the female's quality of life doesn't drop, and that there are no loopholes in their safety. Leah threw Oriton a look, and Oriton, who was sending a piece of meat into his mouth, lowered his head and sighed. Got it, I'll go arrange it. After taking 2 steps, Oriton turned back and looked at Gu Mingming's expression. He pressed his lips into a straight line, and it was obvious that I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it, was written on his face. Gu Mingming looked up and asked, What's the matter? Just say it. Oriton cleared his throat and said with a serious expression, I still want to share dinner tonight. Is roasted meat okay? Gu Mingming. Under such circumstances, Oriton was actually concerned about dinner. Leah was really right. In this beast world, everyone seemed to be so used to the death of males that they were numb to it. Leah made a tisk sound and looked at Oriton. Roast what meat? Can't you see that my Gu Mingming is not in a good mood? If you don't want to share dinner tonight, you can settle it yourself in the wild. Oriton frowned and looked at Leah with an especially unfriendly gaze. That was a grudge from a glutton. Gu Mingming waved her hands and said, Call the females over too. Let's roast meat together tonight, and let them clearly see that I'm still alive. Then they will feel more at ease. Yeah. Oriton's expression softened a little, and he ignored Leah and left directly. After Oriton left, there was only Gu Mingming and her family left. Leah placed Gu Mingming back into the tree hole, and then knelt by her feet. His furry large tail landed gently in her arms, and covered her like a warm blanket. His elbows propped on the sides of the tree hole, and he looked up at Gu Mingming's little face, smiling without saying a word. Gu Mingming looked back at Leah and asked, What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that? Leah chuckled and said, I feel extremely complicated now. I'm proud and disappointed at the same time. What should I do? Gu Mingming looked at Leah in confusion, waiting for him to continue. Leah gently caressed Gu Mingming's little face and said, You are becoming stronger and stronger. You have thought through many things very clearly, and this is a good growth trend. It means that you will no longer be trapped in a pitch-black sadness in the future. This is a good thing. I should be happy, and I should be proud of your growth. But this also means that you need Elvis and me to accompany and comfort you for one less thing. Your reliance on us will also decrease. My heart is empty. I'm afraid that one day, you won't need us anymore. Gu Mingming did not know whether to laugh or cry at Li's worry. This feeling of wanting him to be independent yet afraid of losing his reliance. Wasn't this the mentality of a parent sending their child to kindergarten for the first time? Pulling Li's hand, Gu Mingming looked at Elvis. His expression told her that he also had the same worries. What a tacit understanding. Chapter 665. Leah kissed Gu Mingming's forehead and Elvis tightened his grip on her hand. Gu Mingming heaved a sigh of relief and turned to look at Leah, asking, Can you tell me now? What does using a fake to fight another fake mean? Leah was stunned for half a second before he smiled and rubbed Gu Mingming's little head, saying, Ha, I really can't hide it from you. Gu Mengmeng did not say anything, but her instincts told her that everything had something to do with Cole. Leah rested his chin on Gu Mengmeng's little head and said tirelessly, "Do you remember what I told you on the day I exiled Cole?" Gu Mengmeng nodded. Her memory was frighteningly good now, and it was not easy for her to forget. Leah chuckled and said casually, as if he was narrating a story that had nothing to do with him. "During the few years I was exiled, I hated Cole to the core. But the disparity in our abilities made me unable to take revenge. Getting close to Cole would only make me get played around by him again. If I don't want to become a clown that he can fool around with, the only way is to understand him and surpass him." Gu Mengmeng frowned. She did not really care much about the relationship between siblings, but they were still a family after all. She still could not understand why Cole schemed to harm Leah. Killing someone was just a matter of nodding one's head to the ground. With Cole's abilities, it was not difficult for him to kill Leah, but he did not do so. Instead, he used the cruelest methods to torture Lee's heart, and made him suffer more than death. Leah suddenly chuckled and turned to look at Elvis, saying, So magical. Now when I mention Cole, I actually no longer feel angry and agitated to the point of wanting to kill someone. I even don't feel anything." Elvis chuckled and said, "Congratulations, you finally broke free from Cole's torment. Hatred is no longer your pillar of support in life." Leah raised his brows and said, "Yeah, same to you." Gu Mengmeng held her forehead and looked coldly at the two fellows who did not speak human language. She said, "Do I have to push you two to the wedding ceremony after the same?" Leah was taken aback for a moment before looking at Gu Mengmeng ambiguously, saying, Are you lonely? Ha, you want to see that to relieve yourself?" For a moment, Gu Mengmeng did not understand what Leah was up to. She instinctively moved backwards, but Leah leaned forward and pressed half of his body on top of Gu Mengmeng. His slender and bony hand locked her little hand above her head, while his other hand hooked her chin. He whispered in her ear, "My first time is reserved for you. How can I give it to Elvis? No matter how much you want to see, at least, let me taste your sweetness first, Gu Mengmeng felt a gust of steam coming out from her ears, just like the white smoke spewing out from a steam train after the whistle sounded. She wriggled her body a couple of times and said with a flushed face, Who wants to see?" Leah pulled away a little and looked at Gu Mengmeng slyly. He slid his finger across his lips and licked it with the tip of his tongue. His expression was seductive, just like poppies blooming in the night, making one hold their breath. "You really don't want to see it? If you ask, maybe I'll be willing to cooperate." Chapter 666. Leah spread out his hands and shrugged. He smiled evilly. "See, who is the one who is willing to do anything for you?" Gu Mengmeng held her forehead. She felt that she was almost led into a ditch by Leah again. If Elvis had not spoken up in time to shatter this rotten image, she would have had a nosebleed from Lee's slutty look. She placed one hand on Lee's shoulder and the other on her forehead. She looked up and smiled coldly. "Don't confuse me. Tell me the main point." Leah nodded nonchalantly. Actually, he was only fooling around because he was afraid that the story would be too heavy and would cause Gu Mengmeng to feel depressed. If it was possible, he did not want to talk about those unpleasant and beautiful things. He hoped that his Gu Mengmeng would only see a fairy tale-like world. However, he still couldn't do it with his current strength. Cole is the most talented among this generation in the Snow Fox clan. Be it in terms of intelligence or strength, he is the cream of the crop. It's a pity that his status is not enough to support his ambition. Big Brother and I are the stumbling blocks on his path to success. And compared to Big Brother, he seems to hate me more. Gu Mengmeng frowned. "Why? Didn't you say that you had a good relationship with Cole when you were young?" Leah smiled bitterly. There was a hint of helplessness in his eyes. "Yes, I thought I was good. I thought that second brother doted on me a lot. But, do you think that what you think is what you think?" Gu Mengmeng was confused by Lee's words. "So many think." After a while she said, "Cole had an ulterior motive for treating you so well right from the start?" Leah leaned back and leaned against the side of the tree hole. He looked up at the sky with a lazy expression. He said nonchalantly, A child blessed by the beast deity only appears once every few hundred years. And coincidentally, it's me. Gu Mingming blinked her eyes at Leah. Blessed by the beast deity? How did he bless you? Why can't I tell at all? Leah swayed his tail and said, You've seen quite a number of fox tails in solder. Did you notice any difference between them and me? Gu Mingming recalled carefully and stared at Lee's tail for a while. I didn't see anything. Leah squinted his eyes and leaned closer to Gu Mingming. Looking slightly sullen, he said, I'm not special in your eyes, am I? Gu Mingming was really wronged on this point. Firstly, she did not look carefully at other people's tails. And secondly, who the hell could tell the difference between every fox's tail? Leah kissed Gu Mingming's lips heavily, biting them twice as a punishment. He only released her when he tasted blood on his lips. He leaned back and continued. Other snow foxes will have some silver fur in their tails. When they walk in the snow, it will produce an effect similar to the refraction of sunlight. As for my tail, it was pure white, without a single stray hair. This is also the reason why I'm the only one who can use the art of deduction, even though it's been passed down from generation to generation among witch doctors. What was the difference between white and silver? Forgive Gu Mingming for not being very sensitive to colors. Unless the color difference was as clear as Elvis's and Lee's black and white, she really could not tell that there were a few strands of silver fur in the pure white tail. Clearing her throat, Gu Mingming asked, The art of deduction you guys use your tails to push? Aside from the topic. Come on, everybody repeat after me. Do you think that what you think is what you think? Is there anyone who is tongue-tied? Ha ha ha. That's right, it's time to say goodbye to everyone again. Chapter 667. Leah shook his head and said, Only pure white snow foxes can sense the deity's decree and understand the hidden message in the deduction technique. As for the others, even if they learn the deduction technique, they can't decipher anything. Gu Mingming rolled her eyes at the mention of the beast deity. She was unhappy and mumbled, He doesn't look very reliable. Why do you still trust him so much? Leah rubbed Gu Mingming's little head and said, When I was being exiled by Cole and was struggling with hatred, I had also asked myself this question. Am I really a child blessed by the beast deity? Then why do I have to suffer like this? Until he guided me to meet you. Only then did I understand that he really cared for me. He didn't allow me to waste my good luck anywhere else, just to accumulate enough good luck to meet you and accompany you. Compared to you, those things in the past are not even worth mentioning. Elvis had also said something similar. Gu Mingming turned to look at Elvis with a deep gaze. The two males in her family always used the phrase, not worth mentioning, to downplay the pain of the past. But why would she believe them? How many times had they risked their lives to exchange the phrase, not worth mentioning? Sighing softly, Gu Mingming held Lee's hand and looked at him gently. She said, A child blessed by the beast deity received the protection and preferential treatment of the entire tribe. So Cole was jealous, right? Leah nodded his head in approval and chuckled, as if it was someone else's story. He said, Yes, if he wanted to be the tribe leader, he could have just killed my eldest brother. But even if he killed me, he couldn't replace me. On the day I was exiled, I asked him why he wanted to harm me, and he said because you are the ninth highness. Can't be replaced, but can be destroyed. That's probably what he meant. Gu Mingming's heart ached for Leah. What could be more painful than being betrayed and framed by someone whom she had relied on wholeheartedly? But Leah was smiling casually. He kissed Gu Mingming's little face and said, I was afraid that you would be like this, so I didn't want to tell you. It's all in the past. I don't care about it anymore. Gu Mingming pursed her lips and did not say a word. Don't care about it? If he had really forgotten about it, let it go. And let it go, why would he have created Saint Nazir? He even dared to plot against the messenger of the beast deity. As a witch doctor, he knew better than anyone else that plotting against the messenger of the beast deity was a great disrespect to the beast deity and would result in torture and punishment. But even so, he still did it without hesitation. How was this a sign that he had already let it go? Leah pinched Gu Mingming's little face and said, I can't continue telling my story if you look at me with such a worried expression. Gu Mingming turned around and lay in Li's arms. She leaned her back against his chest and rested her head on his shoulder. She gently closed her eyes and said, "I won't look at you. You can speak." Leah kissed her hair and continued, "If I want to win Cole, I must first learn to think from his point of view. So I started to imitate his actions and guess his thoughts. Slowly, I started to forget how the original Leah was like. My actions were Cole's way of thinking. Strictly speaking, the current me is just a fake of Cole in imitation." Gu Mingming chuckled and said, "So when I was tricked by Cole to solder previously, you said you were worried that I would fall in love with Cole, right?" Aside from the topic, the post "My wife smells so good" from a friend on Twitter was still the same. PK in the middle was still popular. In her previous life, 7 years of sincerity had been wasted, and she had died tragically. In this life, she had transformed into a gentle and lovely lady, a graceful and graceful lady. Although Mr. Chi had countless women around him, he had always left his pillow for her, his one and only lover, Su Wei. Someone asked her, what did she like about him? Answer: he dotes on me and loves me for a very long time. In order to get him, she tortured him in all sorts of ways. In order to get her, he recruited new men in bed. Snippet: Miss Su was curled up on the sofa reading a book when a certain man immediately snatched it over and said in all seriousness, "Reading books is useless. Only by making babies with me can we make the country strong." She glanced at him and said, "Are you very bored?" Chapter 668. Leah squinted his eyes and adjusted to the sunlight that scattered on his face. He looked sideways at Gu Mingming and touched her left ear gently with his fingers. He chuckled and said, "You had destroyed all my confidence at that time. And from some aspects, Cole was indeed more outstanding than me. After all, I had always been imitating him. How could I walk in front of him by stepping on other people's footprints?" Her two males were extremely confident in other aspects, but they were as humble as dust when it came to relationships. Gu Mingming felt helpless and asked Leah, "Are you not afraid now?" Leah pulled Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming did not have much energy and did not want to resist, so she just let him pull her onto his chest like a rag doll and lay on top of him. Leah kissed Gu Mingming's earlobe lightly and said with a huff, "Do you know why I insisted on making Elvis your first partner?" Gu Mingming thought for a while and replied, "You were afraid that I would not accept Elvis after mating with me, and you would not be able to fulfill your promise?" Leah shook his head and said, "You are not heartless towards Elvis. Moreover, with your soft-hearted and kind personality, if I had plotted it, the time you accepted him after we mated would be shorter than the time you accepted me." Gu Mingming thought about it and felt that it was true. She nodded her head in agreement and then asked, "Why is that?" Lee's fingers caressed the snow fox mark on her ear gently, and his gaze was misty as he said, "Because I know how selfish I am." Huh. Gu Mingming did not understand what Leah meant. Leah smiled bitterly and said, "If I was the first partner, even if I knew I could not protect you alone, I would rather drag you to death with me than to allow you to have a second male. But Elvis is different. He can give up everything for you, and he can also defeat everything. Even if he had to grind his heart into pieces inch by inch, as long as you are happy, he would not say a word. It is the safest and most beneficial for you to have such a person as your first partner. The two of you must mate first, so that he can suppress me in terms of strength. Only then can I be at your side with peace of mind, because, when I can't control myself and go crazy from jealousy, there must be someone who can protect you from my madness." Leah made himself sound so evil, but Gu Mingming just laughed out loud. She poked Lee's brows and said, "But you're so selfish, yet you gave up your position as the first partner just to be my insurance. So, I believe that no matter if it's you or Elvis, neither of you will hurt me." Leah allowed Gu Mingming's little hand to poke his forehead. Looking at her gentle and calm eyes, the corners of his lips curved upwards unknowingly. "Of course we won't hurt you, but we will hurt those males who try to get close to you." Gu Mingming chuckled and declined to comment. In her life, Leah and Elvis were enough. After the incident with Snake, she clearly knew that if she didn't want others to get the wrong information, She shouldn't show any kindness from the start. Turning a blind eye is sometimes a kind of mercy. Chapter 669. Yeah, I understand. Gu Mengmeng chuckled. Lee's words meant that she did not need to worry about Cole's schemes. He and Elvis would use all means to prevent Cole from getting close to her. Actually, this was probably protection. How awkward. Did he have to make it sound so sour? You really understand? Leah asked doubtfully. What do you intend to do with Burke? Gu Mengmeng sighed. Kanwa seems to value this master quite a lot. Even Hutta and Jiaoyu are very protective of him. I am afraid that my attitude is too tough and will make the children sad. The little wolves cannot be hurt anymore. Leah narrowed his eyes, emitting a dangerous aura. So you intend to let him use the little wolf cubs as a cover to wander around you? Thinking about it, it was quite annoying. Gu Mengmeng glanced at Elvis, who was lying on the ground, not daring to move, and said in a bad mood. Isn't it all because of some people? Our son has already asked for guidance. Why are you acting so tsundere and still saying why? Tisk. Elvis wanted to explain, but after thinking about it, he swallowed it back. Leah looked at Elvis's bitter expression and could not help but laugh. With a gloating look, he said, some people just want to grind down Kanwa's arrogance and make Kanwa beg him a few more times, so that the little wolf pups can clearly see who is the boss in the family. But who would have thought that Kanwa would become Burke's disciple? Great. Not only did he not manage to control his son, he even brought back a potential love rival. Heh, isn't this a double loss? Elvis did not dare to rebuke Gu Mengmeng, but that did not mean he would allow Leah to do whatever he wanted, so he said with a dark face, I heard that you have been teaching Jiaoyu for a long time. From today's situation, it seems to be quite effective. Leah almost bit his tongue. Thinking of Jiaoyu's behavior today, it really made one's teeth itch with hatred, but one could not do anything to him. Turning to look at Gu Mengmeng, he pinched her little nose in a punitive manner. It's all because you supported them that they became so arrogant and out of control. I'm afraid no one will be able to control them in the future. Thinking of her own sons, Gu Mengmeng's eyes shone with the radiance of motherly love. She rested her face on Lee's chest and said, the pupil surpasses the master. Each generation is stronger than the previous one. The sunlight warmed her body, and she was a little tired after a whole morning. She laid on her stomach and fell asleep. When she opened her eyes again, she was sleeping in Elvis's arms. Elvis sat boldly in the tree hole, as if it was not a tree hole, but a supreme throne. He was like the ruler of the night, looking down from above, insufferably arrogant. Gu Mengmeng nestled in his arms, looking especially petite and weak, giving off the vibe of King Zhou of Shang and his demon concubine Daji. There were 19 bonfires in front of them, with the biggest one on Gu Mengmeng's left and right. Leah and Oriton were working together to skewer the meat and place them on the clean leaves. Ian was on a branch above Gu Mengmeng's head, half sitting and half lying, looking a little unruly and carefree, like a Lord Grim lying on the battlefield. But his face was still sickly, causing him to lack some of the aura and charm of a general. He looked more like a sickly crown prince who followed the army into battle, the kind that looked good, but did not have to go to battle. Chapter 670. Elvis's two simple words successfully attracted everyone's attention. Instantly, other than the crackling sounds of the firewood, everyone was staring at Gu Mengmeng in silence, causing her to feel uneasy for no reason. It was just a nap. Was there a need for everyone in the tribe to watch? All right, let's eat. Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng and stood up, walking to the side of the bonfire before sitting down. Gu Mengmeng was a little worried. Your body has not recovered yet. Is it all right to carry me like this? Elvis raised his eyebrows, chuckling. It's just a small injury. After carrying you for an afternoon, I'm almost fully recovered. Gu Mengmeng rebuked. What's the use of carrying me? I'm not a medicine. Elvis played with Gu Mengmeng's hair, bringing it to his nose for a sniff, chuckling. You're my life-saving elixir. There's nothing more effective than you. Gu Mengmeng did not reply. If not for the fact that there was no internet here, she would have suspected that Elvis had secretly read some weird web novel while she was asleep. She glanced at the surrounding bonfires, including her own. There were a total of 19. Every family had one bonfire, which meant that there were no female casualties in this battle. That's right. Even if all the males in the family died, there were still unmated males who would automatically take over to protect the females. Unless all the males in the tribe died, the females would definitely be well protected. Gu Meng Meng inherited Elvis's eyesight. She could see extremely clearly in the firelight. Each and every familiar face, so calm that not a single trace of sadness could be seen. They were still instructing the males to eat this and that, do this and that. Gu Meng Meng felt a little weird. She had prepared herself to see how sad the females were tonight, before being tortured by guilt till they were covered in cuts and bruises, unable to go any further. She knew that it would definitely be very painful, but she also knew that it was a reasonable torture for her to endure. But she did not expect that these females did not even have the slightest bit of sadness, as if the person who died was a stranger they had never seen before, and not the partners who risked their lives for them and took good care of them. To a certain extent, this lessened Gu Meng Meng's guilt, but she felt another kind of sadness that she could not describe. Sandy's bonfire was the closest to Gu Meng Meng's, on the right side of the tree hole. Sandy sat with his back facing Gu Meng Meng, not turning his head at all. Huda and his brothers did not prepare to roast meat in Gu Meng Meng's fire pit. Instead, they sat beside Sandy's fire pit. Burke sat beside Kanwu. His gaze pierced through the flames and landed on Gu Meng Meng with a scorching heat, as if he could not control his longing for her. Leah held onto the roasted meat branch and snapped it into two. He laughed sinisterly. That pair of eyes really makes me uncomfortable. I really want to dig them out. Gu Meng Meng waved her hands and sighed. Forget it. The children know that you don't like him, and have already brought him to Sandy's place for a free meal. Don't mind him. If he wants to watch, let him watch. Leah took 2 deep breaths, then walked to Gu Meng Meng's side, and used his body to block Burke's line of sight. With a darkened face, he looked at Burke with a threatening gaze. How can I do that? What if I spoil it? Gu Meng Meng did not know whether to laugh or cry. She patted Elvis's shoulder, signaling him to turn around. Chapter 671. The oily barbecued meat gave off a fragrant aroma that whetted one's appetite. Lee's culinary skills were well known. Even though his theoretical knowledge came from Gu Meng Meng, the food he made was much better than Gu Meng Meng's culinary skills. This was also the reason why Oriton never hit Lee's hands when he fought with him. That pair of hands was related to his meals, and must not be careless. Great messenger. A faint voice called out from above, and Gu Meng Meng's scalp went numb. Could this fellow not see that her 2 males were guarding against him as if he was a thief? Was he here to seek death? Gu Meng Meng turned her head, and wanted to pretend that she did not hear anything, so that Burke would back off, and leave after being snubbed. However, Burke was not as tactful as Gu Meng Meng thought he would be. Not only did he not leave, he even squatted down on one knee and pushed Kanwu towards Gu Meng Meng, saying, Kanwu was injured during training today. Although it's not serious, it's better for the witch doctor to treat him. Upon hearing Kanwu's name, Gu Meng Meng turned her head abruptly. Only then did she realize that one of Kanwu's claws was flipped outwards. There were several bruises on his body, as well as dozens of wounds of various sizes. There was a large piece of skin at the corner of his mouth that was dripping with blood. His eyes were lowered, and he did not dare to look at Gu Meng Meng. He looked like a child who had returned home with 0 marks for his parents to sign. Gu Meng Meng's heart twitched violently. She cupped Kanwu's little face and asked with heartache, Who beat you up to this state? Kanwu lowered his head and replied in a small voice, I went hunting, and met a tiger. But I couldn't beat it. Gu Meng Meng gritted her teeth and raised her hand to give Kanwu a slap. But she could not bear to do it. So she looked up and glared at Burke angrily. Kanwu acknowledged you as his master. Is this how you take care of your disciple? Burke did not explain, and just looked at Gu Meng Meng quietly, allowing her to vent her anger on him. Kanwu tugged at Gu Meng Meng's sleeves and explained. Mummy, don't scold Master Burke. Master Burke originally wanted me to hunt rabbits. I was too greedy and arrogant, so I secretly ran far into the tiger's territory. If not for Master Burke's timely rescue, I might not have been able to return today. Gu Mingming also knew that it was wrong to blame Burke, but her son was already so badly injured. She could not bear to even say a few harsh words to him, let alone hit him. Clenching her fists, Gu Mingming said coldly, "Thank you for saving my son once again, but I feel that you are not suitable to be his master. Let his father teach him martial arts in the future." Borg still didn't say anything. He just stood there quietly, but Kanwa lifted his little face and looked at Gu Mingming seriously with his brows furrowed. "Mummy, I will only acknowledge the master I choose myself." Elvis retracted his arm and pulled Gu Mingming back into his arms. He looked at Kanwa with disdain and said, "If he falls into my hands, I will definitely not save him today. If you can't even defeat a mere wild beast, what face do you have to live on?" Gu Mingming turned her head and glared at him. "Elvis." Chapter 672. Hooking Gu Mingming's chin. Elvis smiled evilly in the dark night. He looked deeply at Gu Mingming and said, "As long as you are happy, it is nothing to raise a little wolf cub. But when he becomes food for the enemy in the future, you are not allowed to be sad or cry." Gu Mingming pursed her lips. It was not that she did not understand the principle of survival of the fittest. There were too many related inheritances in Snake's memories. And wasn't this attack by the stray beasts a living example? Even a baby eagle could not learn to fly if it was raised in a hen's nest. She understood the principle, but Kanwa was her biological son. She could not help but feel heartache for him. Kanwa completely ignored Elvis, completely disregarding his words as wind blowing past his ears, dispersing as soon as it blew past him. With his little hands on Gu Mingming's thighs, Kanwa's azure blue eyes reflected the light from the bonfire. With a determination that did not match his age, he frowned slightly and looked into Gu Mingming's eyes. "Mummy, don't worry. I am not in pain, really not in pain. As a born wolf, this little injury is nothing." Gu Mingming was stunned for a moment before she smiled. Kanwa, this fellow, although he said that he hated Elvis and went against him at every turn, in actual fact, Father's influence was still deeply rooted in his heart. That frowning little brows, that pretended to be mature in his eyes, and that phrase "as a born wolf." If one looked closely, it was not difficult to notice that Kanwa was imitating Elvis in many details. Patting Kanwa's little head, Gu Mingming nodded gently. "My son, you are so brave." Kanwa was stunned. He thought Mummy would be angry. He had challenged the authority of the family and disobeyed Mummy's arrangements. And if he had not run into the battlefield, Mummy would not have chased him into the battlefield to find him. That way, Mummy would not have been agitated to the point of releasing her beast pressure. Till now, she was so weak that she could not even sit properly. But Mummy did not blame him. Not a single word. But before Mummy woke up, he was already prepared to be hung on a tree to die, or chased out of the tribe. "Mummy!" Kanwa felt a lump in his throat as he called out in a childish voice. Gu Mingming opened her arms and hugged Kanwa. Patting his back gently, she said, "My son has grown up. He is no longer the little wolf cub who only knows how to hide behind Mummy's back for help after being bullied by Daddy. In the future, Mummy can also rely on you to protect me, my little hero." Kanwa raised his eyes. His azure blue eyes were filled with tears. He nodded firmly and said, "I will always protect my mother." Gu Mingming cupped Kanwa's little head and kissed him on the forehead. "All right, I look forward to it." Kanwa wanted to say something more, but Leah had already grabbed the back of his neck and pulled him out of Gu Mingming's arms. He smiled gently and said, "Kanwa's injuries still have to be dealt with. After all, he is only a half-orc and his recovery ability is still too weak. If he is not dealt with in time, he might suffer for a long time." Gu Mingming nodded. "All right, I'll leave Kanwa to you." Leah carried Kanwa and turned to leave. He only said one sentence. "Don't worry." For some unknown reason, Gu Mingming felt a chill down her spine when she heard Lee's words. Why did his back view of carrying Kanwa look so much like a human trafficker? Chapter 673. Hutta carried Qixian to Gu Mengmeng and asked, "Mummy, can we eat with you?" Gu Mengmeng used her elbow to poke Elvis and said softly, "The children are here, stop fooling around." Elvis was displeased and started to dislike these wolf pups even more. With them around, he could not even get close to them. Annoying, he should not have placed them in Gu Mengmeng's stomach in the first place. How good would it be to just throw them on the ground? Seeing Elvis turn his face away and not say a word, Gu Mengmeng then replied, "Hutta, of course you can. You are my children and should eat with me." Hutta asked again, "Then can Master Burke join too?" Gu Mengmeng was in a difficult position. This type of campfire party at the tribal level was shared by the entire family. Oriton could stay here because he claimed to be Gu Mengmeng's guardian beast, while Ian did not even want to come down to eat from the treetop, so he did not count. It was not a problem for Hutta and his brothers to come back to eat, but Burke, Jiaoyu walked to Hutta's side and squatted down. He hugged his knees with both hands and looked at Gu Mengmeng with his chubby little face. He did not say a word, and Gu Mengmeng's heart melted just from looking at him. And with his posture, not to mention Gu Mengmeng, even Elvis could not resist it. This damn angle and expression was too similar to when Gu Mengmeng had just arrived at St. Nazaire. Jiaoyu tilted his head and said with a troubled expression, "We originally wanted to go to mother-in-law's house for a free meal and Uncle Colin had already agreed. But mother-in-law's eyes were red and tears were dripping down. Looking at her, we don't even have the mood to eat anymore." Gu Mengmeng turned around and saw Sandy stiffening. She had obviously heard Jiaoyu's words and wanted to leave in a hurry, but she stumbled and fell into Colin's arms. "Sandy, what's wrong?" Gu Mengmeng could not move freely now and could only call out to Sandy. Sandy refused to turn back and just buried her face in Colin's arms, saying, I'm fine. It's just that I did not sleep well these 2 days, so my eyes are a little red. I will go back first." Gu Mengmeng knew that something must have happened to Sandy. Didn't Sandy pounce on me the last time she saw me? Even if Colin was not as close to her as before after he failed to rescue her with Elvis and the rest, she had never not taken a glance at her. "How can you say you're fine with such a nasal voice?" Gu Mengmeng frowned and glared at Colin. "Come here, let me take a look." Colin patted Sandy's back lightly and carried her to Gu Mengmeng's side. Now that Colin was no longer the messenger's guard, he did not have the right to share food beside Gu Mengmeng's campfire. Hence, after putting Sandy down, he returned to his own campfire and watched Sandy and Gu Mengmeng's back silently. Gu Mengmeng pulled Sandy's little hand that was covering her face and pulled it downwards. Only then did she see that her eyes had already turned into 2 peaches from crying, red and swollen. "You are." Gu Mengmeng's gaze swept towards Sandy's campfire. She understood, but did not have the courage to continue asking. Sandy shook her head and said, "I'm fine. It's just that the bonfire is too choking my eyes, that's why I keep crying. I'm fine, I'm really fine." "Sorry." Gu Mengmeng frowned and lowered her head. Chapter 674. Sandy looked up and followed Gu Mengmeng's gaze. She was stunned for a moment before lowering her head with a bitter smile. "I forgot that you know how to count." Nina had so many partners at the start of spring. You could tell how many were missing with just one glance. "I have so few partners at home. How could I hide it from your eyes?" Gu Mengmeng hugged Sandy gently and bit her lower lip, unable to say a word. Sandy shook her head and forced a smile. "You don't have to apologize, the 3 of them died because they were protecting me. It's not your fault. If you want to cry, just cry. Why are you acting tough in front of me?" Gu Mengmeng's heart ached terribly. She felt sorry for this silly girl, who was still trying to excuse her even after her partners had died. Sandy bit her lower lip and shook her head. She sniffled before saying, "It's very normal for males to die in battle. I'm not sad at all." Sandy's nasal voice was so thick that even a long sentence would affect her breathing. Gu Mengmeng frowned and said in a low voice, "Are you afraid that I will blame myself? So you kept turning your back to me, not daring to let me know that you are sad? I will blame myself even more if you force yourself to smile like this, silly girl. I would rather you scold me or fight me." Sandy, who had been exposed, could no longer keep up her act. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she cried. I can't beat you, Gu Mingming said. I will stand still and let you hit me. Sandy cried while saying, I can't bear to hit you, sob sob sob. When Leah returned, he saw Sandy hugging Gu Mingming and crying like a dog. He casually threw Kanwu aside and snatched Gu Mingming from Sandy's arms. He looked at Elvis with displeasure. Tisk, you've been hugged so badly. Aren't you going to do something about it? Elvis sighed helplessly and pointed at Sandy. He looked at Leah and asked, Do you think I can snatch her away? Leah hugged Gu Mingming in his arms for a long time before tidying her clothes. Then he smiled at Sandy and said, If only you were a male, then I could tear you apart. Sandy was speechless. Burp. Sandy was so shocked by Lee's smile that she hiccuped. She was so stunned that she even forgot to cry. Gu Mingming patted Lee's chest and said, Don't be like this, Sandy is already upset enough. Leah covered Gu Mingming's little hand and pressed it against his chest. He looked straight into Gu Mingming's eyes with his long and affectionate eyes and said, You are mine. How can I let others hug you so casually? Gu Mingming sighed. Leah and Elvis's jealousy had always been strong, but the difference in their targets was very obvious. In Elvis's eyes, the number one rivals in love were the four little ones represented by Kanwu, and Lee's number one love rival was Sandy. Gu Mingming shrugged helplessly. Regardless of whether it was the four little ones or Sandy, they clearly could not develop any strange feelings for her. She also did not know why these two fellows had to compete with them. Seeing how Leah was about to explode, Gu Mingming wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him on the cheek. Then she smiled and said, What about you? When will the roasted meat be ready? This time, Leah was very pleased with the way he pacified him. He narrowed his eyes and passed Gu Mingming back into Elvis's arms. Exchanging a look with Elvis, he then said in a serious tone, Guard against fire, thieves and best friends, understand? Elvis frowned and looked at Sandy warily. Then he nodded at Leah. Chapter 675. Gu Mingming's appearance calmed the anxious hearts of these people. As long as the messenger of the beast deity was safe, the other sacrifices were all honorable. Gu Mingming and Elvis belonged to the powerful upper echelons. Although they were the most seriously injured, they recovered the fastest. The other second-level and third-level orcs were not so lucky. It was not easy for them to recover from the external injuries caused by the stray beasts and the internal injuries caused by Gu Mingming's uncontrollable pressure. Leah simply arranged for them to recuperate on the spot and continue their journey after most of them had recovered. These few days, Burke would bring Kanwu back to eat with everyone at dinner time. Kanwu suffered new and old injuries every day. He was either lame or had a swollen face. Gu Mingming's heart ached to see him like this, but she did not say anything to him to give up. Seeing Kanwu report to her every night that he had become much stronger after entering the heavenly realm, Gu Mingming could do nothing else other than placing pieces of meat into her son's bowl. This morning, the sun was shining brightly. Gu Mingming sat in the tree hole that Leah had dug for her, stroking Lee's large tail. Leah lay on Gu Mingming's knees, closing his eyes in contentment. Elvis leaned against the tree trunk, his gaze lingering on Gu Mingming. It was as gentle as the mottled sunlight, warm and dense. It's been 7 days and there's actually no next step, Gu Mingming whispered. Lee's fox ears twitched on the top of his head. His lips curved into a smile. Yeah, it's really not Cole's style. Elvis stretched out his hand and passed a cup of warm water to Gu Mingming. Then he said, He mobilized so many people just to send Burke right under our noses? Isn't he afraid that we will just kill him and end things once and for all? Leah nudged Gu Mingming's cup of water, indicating that she had drunk too little and should drink more. Seeing that her lips were moistened by the water, his gaze also became gentler. Gu Mingming must find Cole if she wants to save Qi, so he purposely left his scent on Cole so that we can use Cole as a bargaining chip to lure him out and not kill him easily. Gu Mingming sighed and said, Sometimes, I really don't understand why Cole would go through so much trouble to do this. Kill you? Kill me? Or kill Elvis? No matter which one it is, Borg alone can't do it. Leah tapped Gu Mingming's little face with his finger and said, Cole's character has always been sinister. What he seeks is not to kill but to torture. Take me for example. Back then, I was as young as an ant. If he wanted to kill me, he could have done it without anyone noticing. But he didn't want me to die. He wanted me to live, and watch him take away everything that belonged to me. He wanted me to fall from the high and mighty ninth highness into the mud. He enjoyed the humiliation and inner torment of being stepped on by him, even though I struggled with all my might. Gu Mingming face-bombed. So Cole is a psychopath. Leah chuckled and nodded. Yeah, you can say that. If torturing people is his hobby, then Ming should be safe. Elvis said faintly. If the person he wants to torture is you or me, then nothing is more lethal than snatching Ming away. If the person he wants to torture is Ming, then he must first let Ming live. Out of topic. Hello everyone. Chapter 676. Gu Mingming followed Elvis's train of thought and said, Could it be that Cole wants Burke to kidnap me? Leah didn't seem to mind too much as he looked up at Gu Mingming and said, That might not be the case. To you, Burke is equivalent to those little toys that Cole brought back from outside the tribe. They are just a tool to express his goodwill. Elvis's gaze drifted into the distance and he said, Or perhaps, he will repeat his old tricks. Gu Mingming was taken aback for half a second before she sat up abruptly and said, You mean to kidnap Kanwu and the rest to threaten me? Leah patted Gu Mingming's shoulder lightly to indicate for her to relax and said, If that is the case, Burke would not be so close to Kanwu and the rest. Cole is obviously using Burke as bait. If we are so guarded against him, how would he have the chance to strike? Gu Mingming was a little worried. The children had been too close to Burke recently. If Burke wanted to kidnap them, the chances of him succeeding were very high. Elvis placed his large hand on Gu Mingming's head, and his gaze was deep and calm as he said, Don't worry. Ian and his men are watching over you. I will not let those few wolf cubs drag you into danger again. Gu Mingming then felt a little more at ease and leaned back against the tree hole and said, Kanwu and the rest have been too close to Burke recently. I just don't feel at ease. Why don't you teach our sons personally? You are so strong, you will definitely teach better than Burke. Elvis squatted down on one knee and held Gu Mingming's little hand to kiss her forehead and asked, Are you sure you want me to go? Gu Mingming looked at Elvis in confusion and asked, Is there a problem? Elvis chuckled and said, Nothing. I am just afraid you will not be able to bear it. Gu Mingming had a bad premonition, and she tugged at Elvis's arm and asked, Tell me first, if I hand my sons over to you to train, how will you train him? Elvis thought about it and said, Qi Xian is still unconscious and probably doesn't need to train. I will leave him at home temporarily as a stuffed toy for you to play with. Gu Mingming felt that his words sounded strange, but she could not pinpoint what was strange about it. However, Qi Xian was indeed unable to train in his current state. Any random rabbit could bite him to death. Elvis continued, Jiaoyu and Leah are on the same path. Their attacks are secondary and strategies are their main focus. Just leave that lad to Leah. Thinking of Jiaoyu, Leah face-bombed and said, I've always been the one treating people. But this fellow is a pain in the neck, unmoved by force or persuasion. You blinked your eyes and tried to act cute when you were forced into a corner. You also know that I have no resistance against those eyes. Once, I used an animal skin to cover his eyes. And guess what happened next? Gu Mingming burst out laughing because she was there too. Jiaoyu used his little claws to peel off half of his blindfold. Biting his finger, he looked at Leah and asked, Daddy Leah, are we going to play Polly today? Lee's hair stood on end because from Jiaoyu's tone to his expression, he had perfectly copied Gu Mingming's reaction on the spot. If Gu Mingming had really said those words, Leah would have pounced on her without a second word and tied her up before stripping her naked. But it just had to be a fake, and he was Gu Mingming's biological son. Chapter 677. Leah turned back to glare at Gu Mingming. You're still laughing. What have you been telling the wolf cubs all day long? Gu Mingming shrugged helplessly. I won't take the blame for this. These were the things I used to tell Sandy when I told her stories. She didn't understand what they meant, but when we left the wolf pups in Sandy's care during the beauty pageant, she told them as bedtime stories. What can I do? I'm in despair too. Leah sighed and said, I really can't do anything to Jiaoyu now. You have to teach him yourself. I can't do it. Elvis snorted coldly. If I could do anything to him, would I need you to teach me? Leah looked at Elvis sympathetically. Huh, so you've also been eaten up by this fellow. Elvis twisted his head. The last time Gu Mingming wanted to talk to Sandy and forbade us from eavesdropping. Didn't I bring those 4 fellows for their initial training? The other 3 were thrown into the mud. When it was Jiaoyu's turn, he hugged my leg with a pitiful look. He asked me, Are you really going to throw me away? He looked so much like Xiao Meng. I couldn't even throw him away in the end. Elvis clenched his fists so hard that they cracked. The pendulum on his head was jumping. In the end, that fellow was insatiable. He crawled on my head to pee. Uffed. Gu Mingming couldn't hold it in any longer. She snickered. I thought you couldn't do anything to Kanwu. Turns out Jiaoyu is your biggest headache. Elvis and Leah exchanged glances. Then, they silently turned to look at Gu Mingming. They said in unison, It's all because he inherited your eyes. Gu Mingming fiddled with her hair. She smiled brightly and winked at Elvis. If Leah doesn't want to help you, how do you plan to train the 3 little ones? Elvis had no other thoughts other than a headache at the mention of his 4 sons. Since the moment they were born, he had been regretting doing such a stupid thing. Those 4 fellows were sent by the beast deity to torture him. But Xiaoming loved them. Sighing, Elvis said, Throw him directly into the wild wolves and let fate decide his life or death. Gu Mingming was taken aback. She scrutinized Elvis's expression, trying to find out if he was joking. No, not at all. This guy was serious. Leah held onto Gu Mingming's shoulders before she could open her mouth. His flawlessly handsome face blocked Gu Mingming's eyes and he said, Elvis grew up among the stray beasts, and the training he went through was 100 times harder than what he had planned. He knew that you couldn't bear to, so when Kanwu asked him to teach him, Elvis directly rejected him. Wasn't it to erase Kanwu's arrogance? But because, if he were to train, Kanwu would not even be able to survive? Gu Mingming lowered her head and reached out to pull Elvis's arm. Elvis took the opportunity to pull her into his arms. He did not understand where her sadness came from, but he still hugged her with heartache. I'm just saying. I won't really throw them into the wild wolves. Moreover, even if I am willing to teach them, that kid Kanwu might not be willing to learn from me. Although Borg's methods were a little gentler, it was still safe. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Elvis could only think of this point. Chapter 678. Elvis chuckled and cupped Gu Mingming's little face with both hands. If time could be reversed and I could return to that long period of torture, I would choose to endure more hardships, and then use an even stronger version of myself to welcome you, protect you and take care of you. Gu Mingming lowered her eyes. I would rather you be a little weaker and suffer less. Elvis kissed Gu Mingming's little face. If I was a little weaker, I might not have met you alive. Silly boy. Gu Mingming looked up, her eyes filled with heartache. Elvis pinched her little nose. All right, let's not talk about me. Let's think about Cole's matter first. That fellow, we have to guard against him. Leah nodded and added, the injured are almost fully recovered. We can't keep staying here and wait for Cole to make his move. If he doesn't make any moves in 3 days, we can only continue our journey to Saint Nazaire. Gu Mingming nodded. She thought for a moment. Maybe I should cooperate with Cole's script. Leah glanced sideways at Gu Mingming. His expression was rather stern. What do you want to do? Gu Mingming chuckled. She patted Lee's shoulder. Don't be nervous. I won't mess around like before. Now, I'm an old demon with a mental age of 1,000 years. Leah was tickled by Gu Mingming's words. He tapped her little head. Tell me your plan. We'll go over it. Gu Mingming nodded and told him what she was thinking about. The more Leah and Elvis listened, the tighter their brows furrowed. In the end, Elvis clenched his fist so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. He furrowed his brows and said, I think it's better for me to kill Burke directly and return to St. Nazaire. It's better for me to wait for Cole to strike. Leah nodded. I agree. Gu Mingming facepalmed. How are you going to explain to Kanwu if you kill Burke? Moreover, just like what Leah said, Burke is just a bait thrown out by Cole. He's an innocent person being used. Why take someone's life? The two males understood Gu Mingming too well. They could tell from her expression that she had already made up her mind. Sigh. Other than sighing, Elvis and Leah could only repeat the scenario over and over again, striving to ensure that nothing went wrong. That night, when Borg brought Kanwu and his brothers back for dinner, Kanwu was covered in wounds again. Gu Mingming hugged Kanwu in her arms and comforted him, while listening to him talk about his gains today. Her heart ached for him as she hugged his little face and kissed it. Burke, for your training tomorrow, can you bring me along? Gu Mingming turned around and requested Burke. Burke was taken aback and instinctively looked at Elvis and Leah. Elvis and Leah turned their heads to one side, showing a tacit agreement. Burke could not control the expression on his face. He thought that training Kanwu was the most he could do for Gu Mingming. Dinner time was the happiest and most anticipated time for him, but he never thought that he would have the opportunity to get closer to her. It was like a dream. Gu Mingming watched as Burke's expression kept changing, almost as fast as the changing faces of Sichuan operas. She cleared her throat and asked, Is it inconvenient? Chapter 679. Realizing that he had answered too quickly, Burke cleared his throat and lowered his head, not daring to look into Gu Mingming's eyes. A tinge of pink crept up his ears as he added, I was worried that you would feel heartache if you saw them. Gu Mingming chuckled and said, Children have to grow up eventually. I am willing to do anything for them, but I can't help them grow up. Gu Mingming tilted her head and smiled. Burke only saw it from the corner of his eye, and felt as though countless flowers had bloomed in his heart. The entire world seemed to have faded away, and only that faint smiling face was left in his eyes. Burke was later brought away by the three little ones. He himself staggered as though his soul had flown away. Leah hugged Gu Mingming jealously in his arms, and rested his chin on the top of her head. Looking at Burke walking away, he said unhappily, How long has it been since you spoke to me so gently? This Burke TSK just kill him. Gu Mingming pinched Leah and said, He is just a pawn being used. He is already pitiful enough to be embroiled in the dispute between us and Cole. Moreover, he is Kanwu's master after all. Humph. Leah snorted heavily through his nose. He reached out to carry Gu Mingming, but Elvis beat him to it. Seeing Gu Mingming being carried in Elvis's arms, Leah felt irritated for no reason. He bared his teeth at Elvis, revealing an angry and aggressive expression. Gu Mingming was taken aback. Elvis had always been the one carrying her around at home. Other than the few days when Elvis was seriously injured and Leah acted as her legs, Elvis had always been her exclusive driver. Leah had never had any objections, so why today? Elvis's expression was stern, and his face was extremely black. He pinched Lee's head with his large hand and frowned with anger. Are you trying to challenge my authority as the first partner? Leah was stunned. He looked into Elvis's eyes and his expression froze. After a long while, he finally composed himself and used his hand to brush Elvis's wrist away. Then he rubbed his temples and said, Sorry, I was wrong. Elvis also kept the anger and murderous intent off his face. He did not say a word, and just carried Gu Mingming away. Meanwhile, Leah did not chase after them. After walking for a distance, Gu Mingming saw that Elvis still did not look too good, so she asked, Are you still angry? Elvis shook his head. I'm not angry. I'm just a little worried. Lee's condition is not normal. Gu Mingming recalled Lee's ferocious expression and nodded. Maybe Cole's matter had annoyed him too much, and he was under a lot of pressure, so he could not control his emotions. Don't take it to heart. Elvis sighed and said, I hope so. But Xiaoming, there's something you need to know. Gu Mingming asked with a single syllable. Elvis said, In a family, the first partner's authority is absolute. This was the only way to provide the best living environment for the females. Although we only have 2 males in our family, we cannot break the rules. I can accept your preference for Leah, but I will never allow him to challenge the authority of the first partner. If there is a next time, I won't forgive him so easily. Actually, Gu Mengmeng did not really understand what family authority was. They were a family. Wasn't it better to talk things through? Chapter 680. Gu Mengmeng cupped Elvis's face with both hands and kissed his chin. With a gentle gaze, she said, "It's not that serious, don't mind it too much." Elvis straightened Gu Mengmeng's body and said, "If the authority of the first partner is challenged, the other family members will become restless, and everyone will want to replace her. In this way, the scheming within the family will become more and more intense, followed by deception, bewitchment, and even coercion towards females. This kind of thing is a great threat to the family, the tribe, and even the entire beast world." Gu Mengmeng was taken aback. She had never thought that the matter would be so serious. But Elvis's worries were not groundless. She did not know what the scheming between males would be like, but she had at least watched empresses in the palace, and desire for the golden branch. Women could do anything for the position of empress. Based on the blind love and stubbornness of males towards females in the beast world, they would only be crazier than the women in those television dramas. If all the males in a family were thinking of how to overthrow the first partner and replace her, then the family would fall apart sooner or later. If all the families in a tribe were like that, then the tribe would disappear in the torrent of time, without the need for external enemies. If the entire beast world was filled with such families, what kind of a Jura scene would that be? If she was not the messenger of the beast deity, perhaps such a situation would not matter. But she was the messenger of the beast deity, who was the center of attention. If there was a situation where other partners challenged the first partner in her family, what kind of crazy butterfly effect would be created? Just look at how the 16 valued females, the first beauty of the tribe, imitated her to learn how to be gentle, kind, and interact with others. Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, "I know, I will talk to Leah and ask him not to do such things in the future." Elvis kissed Gu Mengmeng's little face and said in a hoarse voice, "I don't want to do anything that will make you sad, unless it is for your safety." Gu Mengmeng leaned into Elvis's arms, her little face leaning against his chest. She listened to his heartbeat beating against her heart, finally reaching the same frequency. Chuckling, Gu Mengmeng rubbed against him and said, "I know you love me, and I also know Leah won't hurt me. Don't worry, that won't happen." Elvis sighed softly, "I hope so." That night, Gu Mengmeng slept in the tree hole. Elvis held her little hand tightly and sat sideways at the edge of the tree hole. He used his chest as her pillow and his tail as her blanket. He secretly released a small amount of beast pressure to chase away all the mosquitoes nearby, so that she could sleep more peacefully. That night, Leah did not return. No one knew where he had gone. The next morning, when Gu Mengmeng woke up, her 3 sons were lying obediently by her side. The unconscious Qi Xian was lying docilely in her arms, as if he was just sleeping. Leah was preparing breakfast, acting as if yesterday's unpleasantness had never happened. Elvis called Burke to one side and instructed him to take care of Gu Mengmeng. This made Gu Mengmeng rather surprised. He actually allowed her to spend time with Burke alone? She thought that he would definitely follow them. Chapter 681. In the dense forest, the trees were so tall that the tops could not be seen. The layers of tree crowns were like overlapping green clouds, blocking out most of the sunlight. Several light beams shone through the gaps between the leaves, adding a mystical aura to the forest, as if there would be elves peeking out from behind the trees at any time, flapping their cicada-like wings and shuttling between the spots of light. Burke carried Gu Mengmeng on his shoulder, then climbed up a tree fork in his human form. Gu Mengmeng estimated that the tree was about 3 meters tall, about 1.5 stories high. Sitting there, she could clearly see the situation under the tree, but unless it was a deliberate attack, the battle below would not affect Gu Mengmeng. Burke sat beside Gu Mengmeng, his expression a little uneasy. His eyes were fixed on the three little ones who were already hiding under the tree, but he could not help but sneak a few glances at Gu Mengmeng's reaction. It was Gu Mengmeng's first time participating in the children's hunt. Although she was just a VIP spectator, it did not stop Gu Mengmeng's heart from surging with excitement. It was the same feeling as watching a child participate in a cultural performance. She wanted to shake the stranger beside her and say, "Look, the most handsome boy on stage is my son." Everything was ready. After the three little ones exchanged glances, Jiaoyu ran into the depths of the forest alone. Gu Mengmeng frowned, worry written all over her face. Her son was not even a year old. It was always worrying for him to run into such a dangerous place alone. Burke had been observing Gu Mengmeng's reaction. Seeing her frown, he understood her worry and wanted to pat her shoulder, but was afraid that he would be too presumptuous. So he lowered his voice and said, "Don't worry, Jiaoyu is very smart, he will be fine." Well, that was not wrong. She understood the logic, but that did not stop her from worrying. Gu Mengmeng's eyes alternated between Kanwu and Hada. She realized that her two sons' expressions were focused and calm. They were confident in their strategy, and even more confident in their brothers. Gu Mengmeng knew that she had to learn to trust her children. Even if they were not even a year old, they would still be at the age of being pushed in a baby carriage and nibbling on a pacifier in the modern world. But here, they were youths who had already turned into half-beasts. Because of her protective nature, she had already received training later than other children. If she continued to protect her children under her wings like an old hen, how would they survive in the future? Pursing her thin lips into a straight line, Gu Mengmeng grabbed onto the tree branch below her but tightly, fixing herself on the branch to prevent herself from losing control and jumping down, ruining her son's training. Not long after, Gu Mengmeng heard the sound of wild beasts running. She turned her head sharply, and indeed saw Jiaoyu's shadow. He was in beast form now, and his fur color was not as black as Elvis's. It was the color of the coffee, and he looked more like a husky. No matter how much it resembled a pet dog, Gu Mengmeng deeply felt the difference between a dog and a wolf. Chapter 682. Running into the middle of the encirclement, Jiaoyu suddenly braked and turned around, baring his fangs at the pursuing jackal. The jackal did not mind. After all, he was more than twice the size of Jiaoyu. Some saliva dripped down from the corners of his mouth. He had clearly decided that Jiaoyu was just a delicious piece of meat on his plate. But when Kanwu and Hada slowly walked out of the thicket and surrounded him in a triangular formation, the expression on the jackal's face began to change. It only took a few breaths' time for him to go from a sure win to a panicky one. The jackal started to circle around the encirclement, looking for an opening to break through, but the three young ones were clearly in sync, controlling the distance between them perfectly, without a single flaw. And it was also at this time that the jackal realized that his companions were no longer chasing after Jiaoyu with him. Although the three young ones were only half-orcs, an orc with his full aura could still win against a wild beast, not to mention 3 against 1. That was simply the level of crushing and hanging him up. She did not know if it was because of the good chemistry between twin brothers, or because of the effects of Burke's recent training. The three young ones' attacks were flawless. This was not because Gu Mengmeng was blinded by motherly love. She had Snake's memories in her body, and although she had only casually killed a few stray beasts during the stray beast attack, there was still a lot of battle information in Snake's memories, so her evaluation was very high. Although young, the three young ones were already showing their brilliance. Gu Mengmeng focused all her attention on the three young ones fighting with the jackal, and could not help but cheer a few times. But to not disturb her son's performance, Gu Mengmeng resisted the urge. If everything went according to plan, the three young ones should be able to end the battle quickly. But perhaps because his mother was watching, Kanwu's performance was a little too aggressive. He was too eager to prove his own growth. So under the circumstances where the time was not ripe, he rashly launched the final attack on the jackal. The jackal was on the brink of death, and in a situation where it would die if it did not fight. It was much more ferocious than usual. Yuan Wu's attack didn't bite the jackal's throat. Instead, the jackal dodged half a step and bit its muscular chest. He realized that he had made a mistake in his attack and wanted to immediately let go and retreat. But the jackal did not give him the chance and bit the back of Kanwa's neck. Gu Mingming panicked. If the jackal retracted its teeth, Kanwa's spine would be bitten off, and he would die immediately. Just as she was about to jump down to save her son, Borg held her back and stopped her. Before Gu Mingming could even glare at Burke, she saw Jiaoyu pouncing behind the jackal and biting the root of his tail. With a snap, the tail was forcefully ripped off. The jackal howled in pain and heaved a sigh of relief. Kanwa took the opportunity to retreat. Shaking his head, he adjusted his rhythm and pounced on the jackal again. He gave up on the throat and pounced on the jackal's back, biting his spine. Gu Mingming heaved a sigh of relief. Did this lad learn from Elvis or Leah? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Give him a taste of his own medicine. Chapter 683. In the end, Kanwa still managed to bite off the jackal's neck. With his mouth full of blood, he tossed the jackal's head aside and transformed into a human. He looked like a clean 6-year-old boy. Looking up, he stared at Gu Mingming with his azure blue eyes, as if he was a child who had scored 80 marks in a test, and did not know whether his mother would praise or criticize him. He was at a loss and at a loss. Burke jumped down from the tree and opened his arms to catch Gu Mingming. Elvis had instructed him not to let Gu Mingming jump down from a high place. Although she had Snake's regenerative abilities and could recover by herself even if she fell, it did not mean that she would not be in pain. Gu Mingming was heartless and only had her son in her eyes, so she jumped down without hesitation. Burke caught hold of Gu Mingming steadily. He was in a daze when he saw her jump down from the tree. Her trust in him made him feel very happy. Even though she did not even look at him out of the corner of her eyes, he still felt very satisfied. What Burke did not know was that Gu Mingming was the legendary boldness of a skilled person. She did not believe that Burke would catch her, but she knew that nothing would happen to her if she jumped down. Flipping down from Burke's body, Gu Mingming hugged Kanwu and gave him a big kiss. Kanwu, come, open your mouth and let Mummy see your teeth. Kanwu did not understand, and obediently opened his mouth wide for Mummy to check. Gu Mingming poked at his clean, white teeth with her finger to ensure that none of them were loose. Then, she pushed Kanwa's chin closed and kissed him on his round little face. Our Kanwa's teeth are really good. It's effortless for him to bite through such hard things. Mummy's teeth are not as good as yours. I can only eat softer things. Kanwa reached out his little hand and imitated Gu Mingming to touch his own teeth. Then, he stared intently at Gu Mingming's smiling face. After hesitating for a moment, he reached out his meaty little hand to poke Gu Mingming's front teeth. Mummy's teeth are also very good. They are neat and beautiful. You are a female, and do not need to bite hard things. I will leave the best parts of my prey for Mummy to eat. Gu Mingming was so touched that she wanted to cry. She hugged Kanwu and kissed him left and right. Even when her son's face turned red, she still refused to let go. Jiaoyu came forward and raised his little face to ask, Mummy, was my performance not great? Why do you only praise Wu? Gu Mingming pulled Jiaoyu into her arms and planted a few kisses on his face. How is it not great? You don't even know how excited and nervous I was when I saw you lure that jackal over by yourself. My eyes automatically gave you a 50-cent special effect. Jiaoyu asked, what 50-cent special effect? Gu Mingming thought for a while and said, it's like using a kitchen knife to chop an electric wire, with sparks and lightning along the way. He's so handsome. Huda carried Qixin back into his arms and walked in front of Gu Mingming in a mature manner. He poked Kanwa's little head and said, your performance today was not perfect. I hope you won't make such a mistake again in the future. Gu Mingming was taken aback. Was the post-battle summary already? Shouldn't Borg be the one doing this? What? Was Huda the combat class representative? Chapter 684. Hada did not continue to scold Kanwu. He hugged Qixuan with one hand and patted Kanwu's shoulder with the other. I believe you. With that, Hada walked to Gu Mingming and handed Qixuan over to her. Then, he and Jiaoyu carried the jackal towards the water source, probably to clean up their prey. Kanwu walked up to Borg, raised his head and said, Master, let's go as well. The smell of blood here is too strong. It will attract other wild beasts. Besides, Mom doesn't like the smell of blood. Burke nodded, then looked at Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming was taken aback. She then understood that Burke wanted her to decide where to go next. The status of the female was very high. As long as the female was around, the males didn't even have the right to decide where to eat. Gu Mingming placed her hand on Kanwu's shoulder and pulled her son back into her arms. Let's go there. I saw a patch of grass on the way here. It's suitable for a picnic. Burke smiled and nodded, following behind Gu Mingming quietly. He felt a kind of blissful trance, just like the colorful bubbles in the summer, so beautiful that it was unreal. He didn't even dare to speak, fearing that the bubble would burst if he did. The everlasting green grass was tender, making people feel relaxed and happy. Gu Mingming stretched lazily before sitting on the ground. Kanwu stayed by Gu Mingming's side the entire time, his azure blue eyes looking at Gu Mingming from time to time. Thinking about how Gu Mingming praised him just now, he could not help but feel very happy and satisfied. Burke sat an arm's length away from Gu Mingming. He glanced sideways at Gu Mingming and her son getting along so easily and happily. His gaze was gentle. He didn't know that females could be like this. When Hada and Jiaoyu returned, they had a jackal's hide and many pieces of meat that were not neatly cut. Gu Mingming smiled and opened her arms to welcome her two sons back. Jiaoyu pounced into Gu Mingming's arms and looked at her with his deep amber eyes. Mummy, look, this is the beast skin that Hada and I tanned. Gu Mingming took over the beast's skin and unfolded it to take a look. It was basically unusable. But Gu Mingming still smiled gently and said, Yeah, it's really not bad. I think it could be spread over the table as a tablecloth, or hang it at the door as a curtain. What do you think? Jiaoyu shook his head and said, No, I'm going to save it and put it on the bottom of Mom's bed during the winter. Making the bed is also possible, but why the lowest layer? Gu Mingming tilted her head and asked. Jiaoyu chuckled and said, A jackal's skin is not the best and softest. It is uncomfortable when it sticks to the skin. That's why we have to put it on the lowest level to keep it warm. That way we'll be happy. Gu Mingming was extremely touched. She hugged her son in her arms and kissed him. Alright, when the time comes, let's place the skin on the lowest layer and sleep on the bed together, alright? Jiaoyu blushed and took a step back, saying, Mother, we have already grown up. We cannot sleep on the same bed with you anymore. You also know that your males are not normal. They might bite us to death. Gu Mingming facepalmed. Her own males were actually mentally ill in her son's heart. What should she do? How despairing. Sighing, Gu Mingming said, No, they won't do anything that would make me sad. So don't worry, alright? Jiaoyu smiled and kissed Gu Mingming's cheek. We also won't do anything that would make things difficult for Mother. So we will learn to be independent and not let your males find excuses to go crazy. Aside from the topic, today was the last day of February. That monthly ticket would expire tomorrow. How about, give it to me also? We will have a major update in March. I am still waiting for the editor to inform me about the exact time. I am crazily saving chapters, hoping to make my babies happy by then. Chapter 685. Gu Mingming and Burke brought the four little ones for a picnic on the grassland. Although there was only one jackal, and it was not enough for the wolf pups to fill their stomachs, there was still an adult Burke. This bit of meat was too little for them, but it was hunted by their sons alone, so it was enough to show their sincerity. Burke started a fire and placed the meat the children had prepared on the fire to roast. The few of them got along well, chatting and laughing. In the distance, a black and a white shadow quietly watched the person over there, but they couldn't get any closer. Mingming must have known they were here, because she had already turned back to smile at them several times. With Burke's abilities, Although they had purposely sealed off their beast pressure, Burke would still sense their aura if they got any closer. Elvis frowned, his gaze deep and cold. How long do you think Meng Meng will have to interact with Burke like this before Cole makes his move? Leah sighed and shook his head. It's hard to say. From afar, Burke delivered a piece of roasted meat to Gu Meng Meng. They were too far away and Gu Meng Meng could not hear what he said. But Gu Meng Meng gladly received the skewer, and even smiled at Burke. Leah pinched the tree trunk with his hand, and with a crack, he crushed a piece of the tree trunk, leaving a comminuted wound on the body of the tree. The jackal's meat is sour and hard. Meng Meng's stomach will feel uncomfortable if she eats it, Leah said and walked forward, intending to bring Gu Meng Meng back. Elvis held onto Lee's shoulder and pulled him back. This is Meng Meng's decision, we have to obey. Leah turned back and sneered. Aren't you afraid that Burke, who looks so much like you, Jean, will become the third male in our family? Elvis frowned, looking at how gentle and quiet Gu Meng Meng was beside Burke. His chest felt like it was being blocked by cotton. He could not retract the murderous intent in his eyes, but he still nodded with much difficulty. If Meng Meng likes it, I can accept it. Leah flung Elvis's hand away and said coldly, You can, but I can't. Meng Meng already has the abilities of a beast king, and is no longer an ordinary female, who needs many powerful partners to protect her. Therefore, I will not allow another person in our family to compete with me. Never. With that, Leah strode towards Gu Meng Meng. Elvis shot forward and blocked in front of Leah. With a cold face he said, Neither you nor I have the right to stop Meng Meng from mating with a male she likes. Just as you said, Meng Meng is the messenger of the beast deity. She has the right to get all the males she likes in this world. Leah raised his head and stared at Elvis coldly. Did you hear what Maya said this morning? Elvis frowned and did not reply, but that flash of darkness proved that Lee's guess was right. In the morning, when Burke brought Gu Meng Meng and the 4 little ones away, they happened to pass by Maya's temporary residence. She said to her partner, Burke is coincidentally a wolf beast too. From the looks of it, I thought he was Gu Meng Meng's partner and the father of the little wolves. Waving his tail, Leah said, Are you really willing to let him replace your position by Meng Meng's side? Elvis narrowed his eyes and gave off a dangerous aura. He gritted his teeth and said, He can't replace me. I am Xiaoming's first partner. Digression. The first greeting in March, babies, good morning. Chapter 686. Leah sneered and said, If you want to hold on to the title of first partner, you can hold on to it yourself. I'm just a partner who climbed up from a beast pet. I don't need that good reputation, I only want Meng Meng. With that, Leah transformed into a fox and found an opening to dash past Elvis's arms, heading straight for Gu Meng Meng. Elvis's brows were tightly furrowed as he watched Leah run off. Actually, Leah was right. He was just as jealous, about to go crazy, and wanted to dash over to take Gu Meng Meng away. Moreover, the magnanimity of the first partner did not seem to be that important. Or else, how could Leah easily find an opening to create trouble in front of him? Sighing, Elvis followed Leah with large strides, heading towards Gu Meng Meng. Leah had already circled Gu Meng Meng in his arms, his furry large tail replacing Qixuan's position, occupying Gu Meng Meng's embrace. Huda carried Qixuan in his arms and looked helplessly at Leah, who was staring at Burke while being intimate with Gu Meng Meng. He pulled Jiaoyu and Kanwu along helplessly. Let's go eat over there. Jiaoyu and Kanwu looked at Gu Meng Meng helplessly and shook their heads. They did not say a word and followed Huda to the fire pit to start sharing the roasted meat. When Elvis walked over, he saw Leah hugging Gu Meng Meng, kissing and rubbing against her, as if he was replacing the lingering smell of Burke on Gu Meng Meng's body. Burke stood 3 steps away, quietly watching Leah act coquettishly towards Gu Meng Meng, and Gu Meng Meng's unprincipled acceptance. He would be lying if he said he was not envious. Elvis took Gu Meng Meng from Lee's arms and turned to look at Burke. Thank you for taking care of Xiaoming for the entire morning. We are here to bring her home for lunch. Burke's gaze landed on the roasted meat that Gu Meng Meng had only eaten 2 mouthfuls before Leah dashed out and sent it flying. He felt a little disappointed, but did not have the right to stop him. He could only nod without saying a word. Elvis carried Gu Meng Meng and turned to leave. When Leah walked past Burke, he chuckled and said, "The injuries on your back are almost healed. Do you intend to let the wolf pups hunt you and eat ready-made food?" Burke did not say a word, and just quietly watched Gu Meng Meng's receding figure. A red glow flashed across Lee's eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. He smiled, a smile like a flower on a high mountain. When Gu Meng Meng had walked far enough and could no longer hear his words, Leah then said, "No matter what his motive is for you to get close to Gu Meng Meng, I will not let you succeed. Keep Kanwu on your good side. If one day he discovers your true colors and falls out with you, I will let you get to know Saint Nazir's witch-doctor Leah again." With that, Leah flew out and chased after Elvis and Gu Meng Meng. "Meng Meng, I stewed a bird for you today. Meng Meng, did you miss me this morning?" "Meng Meng, call me Daddy Leah." Burke stood at his original spot, not moving an inch. He quietly watched as Gu Meng Meng disappeared into the horizon, before slowly relaxing his tightly clenched fists. What was that person's purpose? Even Burke himself had no idea what was going on. He could feel that that person was not purely helping him pursue Gu Meng Meng. He must have an ulterior motive. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.